Hi, I'm Commissioner Nancy Jester, and welcome to Nancy Jester Reports for Tuesday, July 10th. Today, your Board of Commissioners met in their regular meeting, and it was a very important meeting. This is the budget season, the mid-year budget season, where we amend the budget, finalize it, because now we have a better picture of the digest, and we set the millage rate. So, the beginning of the year, we do a budget, but it's really a tentative budget until mid-year. So we worked on that, and I'm very proud of the outcome. Even though it was a no vote, there are some things I don't like about the budget, and some things I do like about the budget. So I'm a no vote because philosophically, I think our tax rate is just in general too high, and I don't think we have the right mix of spending that focuses on public safety. So until we get that squared away, I can't in good conscience vote to approve a budget. But there are many good aspects of this budget, and we're going in the right direction on a lot of things. And as the chair of the Finance Committee, I was very proud of the way the Board of Commissioners worked together. The net result, which I think is very important, is that we will be adding about $7 million to reserves. And in this amendment process, we did not change that. So that money did not get spent on pet projects here or there. We still maintained the addition to reserves for this year will be about $7 million. So we're growing our reserves, which is very good for our bond rating. So I'm very happy for that. We're reducing our dependence on tax anticipation notes, which we're still having to use, and I don't like, but we are reducing those tax anticipation note dollar figures. So we're going in the right direction. I can say that the process that we used to narrow down any changes to the budget where we made some additions, and again, we made some additions and some changes, but did not eat into that addition to reserve. So that is a very new thing for DeKalb over the last 2 years. So I'm proud of that and the organized way with which we use the Finance Committee, which I chair, to make that a reality. One of the things we did enhance, and I'm very happy that we did, was public safety in that through the DA's office, because the DA is short on prosecutors for major crime, and we have had increase in murders, and the DA needed some resources there. So I'm very proud of the enhancements we made there. We made some enhancements to our accountability courts, and I'm very pleased with that. Veterans Court, mental health court, and drug courts, those all got a little boost in their budget. Very happy with that. Happy with some additions to, I've got my notes here, so bear with me. Also, the revitalization effort for the Memorial Drive corridor, we've got some studying that we're going to be doing there, so I'm very happy about that, and some small enhancements to parks and cultural arts. So overall, I'm happy with that process. I'm mainly happy with that we are going in the right direction again with our reserves. When we get there and we can lower our millage rates and focus more on public safety, I can turn my no vote overall into a yes vote, but we're not at that point yet. I did say that my focus next year will be to reduce the millage rate. I think we've got our processes better, but we've got to bring down particularly that general fund millage rate. And that is the millage rate, by the way, that is driving the increase in the millage rate for the cities, whereas the unincorporated area has stayed the same for several years at 20.81 mils. The cities have this up and down. This year is an up because of the volatility of the general fund millage rate. We have got to bring that millage rate down and keep it down, and we have got to focus on public safety and what we need in the police and fire funds to make sure that we are handling that obligation as we need to as a county. So that's our budget. So one of the things, I'm going to go off of the agenda for just a minute. We did talk about how your property tax bill is calculated. That was confusing to a lot of people. We had a lot of public comment about my bill's going up, my bill's going down. Why am I getting a rate increase? So if you live in unincorporated DeKalb, let's just talk about that first. Your rate is staying the same, 20.81 mils. If you live in a city, except for Stonecrest and Tucker, which are really treated tax-wise, they don't impose a city millage, so they use all of the services from the county, so they pay exactly what unincorporated does. But if you're in any other city, you pay based on the services you use. We have a very complicated system in DeKalb. It's probably the most complicated in the state. We have 7 tax funds. So you don't just get charged one millage, you get charged depending on the bucket you use. So everybody pays the general fund, for instance, and that pays for your countywide court system, your sheriff, your DA, your solicitor, and a whole host of other countywide services that you receive. Then there's a police fund and a fire fund. Well, if you're not using the police fund, you don't pay that. So cities that have their own police forces wouldn't be using that. So depending on your city's level of services from the county, you're paying different millage rates. And so therefore, based on the volatility of those millage rates, your city may have seen an increase. Every city in District 1 saw an increase. That really bothers me. Again, and I won't vote for a budget where I see that happening. And that happened this year, and it's happened in previous years, and I didn't vote for it then. Until we get that general fund down and less volatile, I'm not going to vote to pass a budget. But people ask questions about their taxes because there was a notice that went out that said, notice of tax increase. So even though the millage rate overall for unincorporated was the same. So people were confused. What I want to do is take a moment to just sort of talk through in a simplistic way the way your tax bill comes into how it is determined. So first of all, and we had the assessor speak at our board meeting, so if you ever want to go back and look at the board meeting, Calvin Hicks, who is our chief property appraiser, was there and giving some insight into how that happens. But so for the purposes of taxation, we're obligated, as is every county, you go out and you assess properties, so you value them. They do it on a market basis, and so this year has been a good year for property. So you're going to see an increase in your value that is assessed. You can appeal that. So if you want to appeal that, and I encourage everyone to do so, please do so by the deadline. And if you need help from our office, give us a buzz. But you get an assessment. The thing is, is that what you're going to be taxed on, that assessment? Not necessarily. If you've lived in your home for many years, you likely have a assessment freeze, and you need to make sure you do that is congruent with your homestead. Okay, so if you live in your house and you've lived there since 2008, likely the value at which you are taxed is pegged at only that 2008 value. So if you have continued to exceed and grow in value, that is not part of your tax bill. We can only tax you on that frozen value back from 2008. So that's a credit you receive on your tax bill, essentially. Also you have the exemptions next. So whatever your frozen value is, and it's going to be different for every household, different for every parcel, then you've got your exemption. So if you have a homestead exemption, you've got that. If you have a senior exemption, other exemptions, they come into play. Then you multiply that number by your millage rate. And is that the end of the story? Well, not quite yet either, because now with the SPLOST and the e-host, you're going to get yet another credit to offset that tax. You're going to get this e-host credit. So those are kind of that's kind of the four-step process to determine your tax bill. And it's a little bit confusing. It is individual, parcel by parcel based. And I'm going to put something up in a blog or on social media in my newsletter about that process so people can understand it, the nuts and bolts of that going on in the future. So the rest of our meeting, obviously that was the big thing that we talked a lot about. We had a number of procurement items, pretty perfunctory things. A couple things I'll draw your attention to. We didn't vote on them yet, but we will be voting on a memo of understanding with the Atlanta Regional Commission regarding a transit study for DeKalb. This is actually a really big deal. They'll be spending like $1 million to study just DeKalb and our transit needs. So that's very good. We will also be discussing bringing forth a brunch bill referendum that will allow folks to have alcoholic beverages served on Sundays starting at 11 in restaurants. So that's typically referred to as the brunch bill. So you'll see that in the future. We haven't voted on that, but probably will do so in the next 2 weeks. So outside of our board meeting, we had a very full agenda on our OPS, our County Operations Committee meeting, which I sit on. It's chaired by Commissioner Bradshaw. We discussed, among other things, the Confederate monuments. Still don't have any movement on that. they're still working on it. There's in theory, or there's a suggestion that there's a church that's interested in helping find a solution. And I know Commissioner Gannon and Commissioner Rader have worked with, I believe, the Atlanta History Center to try and contextualize the monument in place. So I'm against moving it, and I've stated that, but we shall see what the plans are going forward. So far, we haven't received any proposals that would move it. Nothing's really come out of that. So I'll keep you posted on that. We talked about the county disclosure policy. So our ethics officer's been working on improvements and simplifications and more transparency for county disclosure. This is different from elected officials' disclosures that we have to file pursuant to state ethics laws. This is about basically folks in the county that have, they make decisions that affect you and everyone else. And this is a disclosure that they have to file if they're sort of high up, a director, so that they would reveal any conflicts of interest or any money they are getting from outside sources to, again, to be transparent for all the public, so you know what's going on. You don't want to see any pay for play kind of things. You want to see everybody being very open and transparent about any of their income sources or conflicts that are potential to their job performance. So we're working on, we do have that already, we're working on upgrading that ordinance. And last but certainly not least, we had a very spirited and detailed conversation about the Animal Services RFP that is going out, and I have to always commend the Animal Services Citizens Advisory Board, perhaps one of the most effective citizen volunteer boards in DeKalb County, and one of the most detailed and knowledgeable groups of citizens that advocate on behalf of the humane treatment of animals in DeKalb County. We are putting forth the RFP for the shelter services who will run the shelter. It has been Lifeline for many years, and Lifeline took us from a massive kill rate in the shelter to we are basically considered a no-kill shelter now. We saw the advocacy of the Animal Services Board result in a new animal shelter that was very much needed. The old one was just condemnable, in my opinion. So the RFP will go back on the street to see what vendor can take over the services for the shelter. Again, right now Lifeline is operating it, as they do, I believe, in Fulton County. They have a great track record. I'm sure they'll bid on it, and others are certainly invited to bid on that. But they've done a great job. So we're just working with the Animal Services Advisory Board to come up with the best scope of work, so that the scope is in line with the no-kill approach and all the philosophical and humane treatment requirements that we want to see any service operator continue for DeKalb County. We've had some points of contention regarding that. I am in complete support of the Citizens Advisory Board on this one, so I'm looking forward to getting back a final scope of this RFP at our next ops meeting, maybe in 2 weeks, so that we can get it on the street and get that particular procurement out there. So again, kudos to them for keeping this, going in the right direction, and I'm very pleased with their advocacy. But so that RFP, I look forward to that being finished hopefully in the next 2 weeks, to the satisfaction of that committee and those wonderful volunteers. So that was our very full day on Tuesday, the 10th of July, and join us next time for another edition of Nancy Jester Reports. Thank you.